Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell in the upper right-hand corner. Follow me on all forms of social media. Check me out at thatdrummerguy.com and enjoy the following presentation. Hello.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, doing good, man. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
Oh, absolutely.
And with that, thank you very much for reaching out to me, not only to do this interview, but to check out the band and everything. I mean, of course, I was familiar with the band and was really interested to be able to check out more, but with you getting a hold of me online and being able to check out the album in full and being able to see the context of everything, it really did help this brand new album from Head with Wings to be easily one of my favorite albums of 2018.
Thanks, man. I think I saw you do something with was it with Mile Marker Zero? I mean, you've done interviews with quite a few of my peers or colleagues, I'll say, but I'm trying to recall which one jumped out at me to contact you. I think. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, sorry. I think that was the one. I remember it was not long after that you started getting hold of me for the first time.
Mile Marker, right? Mile Marker Zero? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that had to be the moment where I was like, wow, look what this dude's up to.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful for that, too. And especially when anyone out there thinks that I'm worthy enough to check out their album and, give them my thoughts and have me being able to promote them in a way like this. And what an amazing album to be able to talk about, even with it coming out in technically the first half of 2018. I mean, with a few months now with From Worry to Shame being out now, the more that I listen to it, the more that I'm able to catch on to things that are going on from all sides, musically, production-wise, lyrically, thematically, everything that's going on there. And it's just so great despite all of the heavy themes that are going on there, it's one of those things that you just constantly want to go back to and just discover more and more from it.
Yeah, thanks. I had one of our fans recently, at a recent show, was like, I didn't even really realize it was a concept record. So that was interesting. But I think if you're, someone that has known us, since our beginning, maybe, and you kind of were there along with the development of these songs, it wasn't like we just wrote, we said, okay, we're going to do 9 songs that are going to be on a concept record. It was just, an organic development over time. So I could see where someone who's been there since the beginning, it might be a bit demystified, you know what I mean? But when you see the final presentation, in its final or current and final form, I think it's much easier to digest in that fashion and can be perceived as such.
Yeah, and I can totally see that too, and I know that happens all the times, especially when it comes to more of that progressive side when you do concept albums, because sometimes it does go over a lot of people's heads about how all the songs are interconnected, and sometimes they just hear a single and they just pay attention to the singles, sometimes they just pay attention to the first half of the album, so they never really truly get to grasp the whole thing that's going on there. But then there's the other side of the fan base that, like myself, where it's I try to pay attention to every single detail that's going on there. I make sure to listen to the album from start to finish to see if there's things I need to pick up on. I try to listen to the lyrics as much as possible. If I don't always get the lyric sheet, just trying to incorporate everything that's going on there and just make sure that the album can possibly be everything that I was hoping it to be. And that's exactly what I hear here. I mean, just again, despite the heavy themes that are going on throughout this entire album, it's just emotionally, musically, I mean, everything, just goes from heavy and melodic, these great moments that are going on there, and at the end, just given just that little tad of hope that things can get better.
Yeah, that's for sure in there. We're not so overt with the the conceptual side of it. It comes down to kind of connecting the dots. A lot of the lyrics on the album are it's metaphorical and somewhat ambiguous, but the lyrics in one song kind of allude to ideas in the next song and so on, and it jumps around quite a bit. But it's not an overt storyline. It's kind of this album has its own world through all of the imagery that we devised in the album art package, down down to the the panels in the lyric book. All of it is kind of like setting the stage, and we're just trying to paint scenes, if you will, but we don't want to in the musical form. We don't want to just kind of like berate the listener with this is about this is about that. But at the end of with the whole when the whole piece comes together, all the aspects, the music, the lyrics, the imagery, it all does point to this this particular world and story. Some people just get it right away, and then others need a little bit of a hand, or they'll just ignore the narrative altogether. So yeah, I'm very pleased that it could work in like a multifaceted way. If you want it, it's there. If not, just connect to it emotionally, hopefully.
Oh, very much so. And with that in mind, with being able to spend years making sure that this album could be everything that it could possibly be, and getting some help from the amazing guys in Earthside, and now with the fact that the album's been out just a little over 3 months now, what's it like for you to look back and see the accomplishment that this album came to be?
Yeah, I guess if I dwell on it too much, it's kind of overwhelming, because when you think of all the the emotional baggage that comes with it, it's not only just the baggage within the songs, but it's the time and energy and the dedication that everyone involved put in, and it was just a labor of love for all of us. We knew that we're putting out a rock album in 2018, and let alone one that can be perceived as a deep emotional experience, or I'd hope. It's not something that you can really get into just hoping it's going to elicit, a big financial payoff. That's not I don't think that's what art is about. So I'm very lucky to be able to have aligned myself with, this amazing cast of characters from the musicians involved, that are in the band, that were in the band, and then, down to Frank and Jamie and Earthside, and other members of their band too, because you got to imagine the kind of time that they put into it. They were putting some of their own pursuits on hold, or at least not quite spreading themselves thin, but it just took time, as you pointed out. So it's just the baggage of knowing that I took up so much time from some of my close friends and collaborators that I could only hope that the album would just become increasingly popular. One, so it's a gateway to the next one, because we're eager to do another one. And so that way everyone that worked on it just kind of, feels satisfied with where it's heading. And a lot of that falls down on being a modern musician. You're doing a lot yourself. It really does fall on our shoulders to get it out there, especially given that Head with Wings is an independent project right now.
Yeah, and that totally makes a lot of sense. Especially in modern times, you get so much more emotionally invested, and it's not always just from the songwriting side, but it's also from being able to do things almost entirely by yourself until, even when you get to the point where there's labels that are interested in you, there's so much that you have to pretty much do yourself, and the label pretty much just does a promotional costs and stuff like that, but otherwise, and sometimes touring expenses, but otherwise you're doing everything yourself as well, still going on through all of that, so you get that much more emotionally driven in making sure that the project or band or whatever that you choose to do is going to be successful, because you are putting that much time into it.
Right. That's why it comes down to, are you pursuing art, or you just want to be an entertainer, I suppose. It's always for us, art is always a labor of love. And our art is predominantly our music, though we do try to branch off into other mediums. It's even harder to, I always viewed Head with Wings as this media amalgamation, I've wanted to, even in our early days, I wanted to do comic books. We've always wanted to do more music videos. We've always wanted them to be interconnected. We're very interested in world building to a certain degree, but not to the detriment of emotional engagement in music. So yeah, it's kind of, I guess it's tough wanting to always do more, but feeling like you kind of just have to pick your battles and just kind of roll with, the punches in the present and just chip away at it. It's definitely the kind of thing where we're just chipping away at it, piece by piece, day by day, and just always trying to maintain, scope and like oversight on, in terms of quality.
And to me, that is way more fulfilling to me, just like making sure that you're going into whatever endeavors that you're doing with the right intentions to make sure that they're as good as you can possibly make them out to be, and spend that time being able to do that. I mean, even though the payoff isn't instant when you do it that way, but when you do it and, there is that slow burn that everyone gets to start checking out what you're doing, and, you get all these different outlets that are interested in what you're doing. They haven't heard something like this before. Sometimes they're longtime fans that have been around there since day one, and everyone starts telling everybody what's going on there, and you start seeing that rise little by little, and that's what I consistently keep seeing with Head with Wings, and it's so great to see that. I mean, with all the time and effort that I can clearly hear what's going on through the music and the artwork and the music videos and everything that I've seen going into this band, I mean, it's great to see that it's continuously rising the way that it has been.
Right. And I should note that, of course, I'm appreciative for you taking the time to do this interview, but even more so because what I've come to learn about, I guess, what's called premiere culture is that, it's like you can work on an album or a music video for, months, years, however long, but then, certain aspects or people, players in the media, only care so much to cover you if, you have a new piece of content that you're putting out. And then it's like after it comes out, it's kind of like, for us, thankfully, there's been like this slow burning process, which, we kind of anticipated, and that's fine. But there's just something about this premiere culture that it's just, I don't know, I guess it doesn't matter if I agree with it or not, but that's all to say, thanks for being willing to cover the band, even though, we're however many, 3 months, post-release, and seemingly aren't putting out any new content right now. That's just what I've learned about, the music media, is that if you don't have something to put out, in the present, you're just not worth covering to a certain degree. I don't know what you make of that.
Well, I've always known myself to be very much against the grain when it comes to something like that, and that absolutely makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the interviews that I do, I mean, it's for things that are going to be coming up in the future, but I mean, that's with a lot of things that get presented to me at the time. But when I'm able to go and discover stuff myself, like I want to make sure that I can go out there and promote it. It doesn't matter if it came out 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a couple years ago, if there's something to be able to promote, like if there's any live shows that are coming up, if it's just a really good album, if it's just a good group of people that are making this music. I mean, to me, in this particular instance, I mean, even though the album came out 3 months ago, I want to look at this interview as something as, hey, this album came out 3 months ago, you need to go check it out, rather than like, this album's 3 months ago, there's no need to check it out until you see what's in the year list. Like, hey, this album is out, go check it out, it's amazing. That's the way I look at it.
And I appreciate that, but, you'll find some critics that maybe just don't even have, you got to them too late. They, their schedule's full. You have, artists putting out albums that, every week to week, and it's just, then you only have so much clout when you're a relatively new band. And, it's almost just like, it's that premiere culture. It's just, you were your last week's your old news, and now it's just so-and-so is releasing an album, and so-and-so is releasing an album, and it's just like, and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's like, why not have a conversation about it whenever, if we come to mind, sure, I'll talk about it any day, regardless of what's come out, or when it's come out. So anyway, it's just something I was, that's been on my mind after having to, embark on this, becoming more publicity minded this year. Cause we were kind of like, we always joke about Head with Wings, kind of like it's, Head with Wings, the untold story, which is kind of like we've been around for a while, but yet, we're not pretty much, we're not exactly like type A personality people. We kind of like hibernate and do our work and, obsess about our art. And then, it's kind of like being a little bit of a reclusive person, and then having to kind of, wave your hand, being like, I'm here, look at me, look what I can do, which is weird because when you're, we're also a live band, and when we're up on stage, it's very much about being, the intensity of the music. But as people, we're left to, there's sometimes a bit of a disconnect between what you're expected to do and what you can do, I guess, within your personality.
Yeah, and I can very much relate to that, both on the musical level and what I do here with that drummer guy as well. Because, I mean, when I was growing up, I was 9 years old, I started playing drums and stuff like that, and I was able to start doing these cover band things, had a few original bands and stuff like that, and always had this feeling that I was able to do more than what we were currently doing, and but I always found myself with a group of musicians that were very much that type A, and I was very much of the type B mentality, where I did have more of that recluse thing, where I want to be able to craft these things, make sure they're the way that I want them to be, rather than being very overtly out there. But also when it came into the non-drumming side of what I do with that drummer guy, I pretty much have to be that outgoing, outverted guy, because I'm out there trying to promote all these bands that I care about. And I remember talking to you a few days ago where I was like talking about how in the beginning, like, I had no confidence in myself with being able to do this. Like, the first time I ever got an opportunity to interview a band, I was so scared to be able to even go out and talk to someone that's actually known, or even anybody at all, because I was just that kind of person that it took me so long to be able to connect with people. But just like over time, I was able to build that side of me, building that type A kind of side. So to me, I'm just trying to find that perfect balance of being able to make sure that I have that structure and creativity that I want to be able to spend my time with, but also being out there on the other side, making sure that I can promote these bands that I care about. Because if I spend too much time not being making sure that the interview sounds as perfect as possible, and making sure that I know everything that's out there, that a few albums are going to go by before I can perfectly get the interview that I'm promoting the particular album for.
Right. Yeah, there's certainly a balance, to wanting to maintain, I guess, your artistic integrity, and then getting yourself out there, and not being afraid of the media, I guess, in a certain regard. I know in our band we always wondered, it's ironic that we always wondered, what is our story, and then it's like, okay, well, your story is not just your music, your story is your upbringing and your struggles, and where you come from, and your family and your friends and all these things. And then when you're so preoccupied, making music and doing a band, I think it's easy to kind of lose perspective, as to who you are and where you come from, and not losing sight of, like, we do have a story, it's just, and it is worth telling, and it kind of, it's just as worthy of telling as a story in an album,
And that's why I'm so glad to see that, even though it was more of a slow burn of what's going on, it's just like the beginnings of the payoff are starting to happen now. I mean, all these great outlets that were willing to show you guys off when the album came out, seeing the majority of great reviews that came out there. I mean, it did come across a few negative ones, but that's always going to happen with any album that comes out. But, just constantly seeing the rise in popularity of what's going on, the great attachment to everything that's going on there, and people are starting to get to hear more of that story now, both on that personal level, both on the concept album level, and when they get the chance to be able to see you live, getting that aspect of the band as well.
Right. There were aspects that that came out along doing interviews around this album cycle. Things that I guess I didn't without getting into, I guess, too many specifics. There were elements behind the music that I had just kind of tucked away and internalized myself, and didn't realize, oh wow, these are talking points, let's say, or points of interest that otherwise would have just been within the fabric of the work, and had we not touched upon them, maybe influences of from personal tragedy or societal events or incidents, those kinds of things were just kind of tucked away in the fabric of the work, and it's worth talking about to a certain extent. But what furthermore, once we did start talking about some of these things, that then becomes the fixation, you know what I mean? And then we never get past the first two tracks, which tracks 1 and 2 on the album were our focus tracks, and then we never really got past that in terms of the media. And I guess that's just kind of how it goes, right? When you put out an album, I mean, we had never put one out on this level before, so I guess in a way it makes sense that we were just fixating on Goodbye Sky and Somewhere Something Gives, but then you have 7 other tracks that of course, as the artist are just as worthy of talking about, but yet they didn't quite have that promotional, baggage and focus. And then and we only kind of focused on the influences of those songs because those were our focus tracks. You see what I mean? And then it just kind of left the rest of the story just open to interpretation, which is fine. But I guess there's plenty more to talk about.
Oh yeah, and that also brings it back to like when I first started like this, when I was just trying to get my feet wet with doing interviews, and I remember people that were helping me out along the way and said, "Oh, don't worry about the rest of the album. Just make sure that you talk about the singles because that's what most people are going to be paying attention to." But I grew up with the mentality of, well, there's an entire album worth of music here. My favorite song might not be the single. I mean, I want to be able to check this out and see what this is about, and especially when I just discovering progressive music and understood the idea of what a concept album was for the first time. It's like, wow, I didn't know that all these stories could be interconnected like this, like in a movie or a TV show or a comic book or whatever. And hearing that from the musical side like that, I mean, that just opened my mind so much. And now, I mean, of course, with years and years of experience now, being able to check out all these different kinds of albums from all different styles, be it a concept album or not, I want to be able to check out every song from start to finish because there's so much that you can learn from a band just being able to hear the album from start to finish rather than just the focus tracks.
Right. And hey, I'm glad you have the time and interest to dig in. That's those are the kinds of people that are there. I mean, anyone's worth talking to a certain degree, but those are the kinds of people that we can kind of just talk shop with. And I bet you I'd get kind of carried away, and I have at shows in the past. Where I have this issue where it's tough to pull away, once someone's chatting my ear off, which is probably not the best quality to have when to just call it quits and be able to move on. My wife would be the first person to say, like, like she, in a scenario where we're at a venue and she wants to leave or get going for the night, but yet I'm just you're talking to one person and then the next, and you think a 5-minute conversation it's just gonna be 5 minutes and then it turns into 30 minutes, and so yeah, that's once someone gets me going, like I can't stop.
Yeah, I completely understand that as well, and especially early on when I was going to shows as much as possible, and I was doing more in-person interviews rather than over the phone. Like I was missing complete other bands that I was supposed to cover that night because I was so engaged with conversation that was off the record rather than just like focusing on the interview and just like getting caught up talking to these people, be it fans, be it bands, be it random people. And yeah, I mean, you got to be able to find that right balance. I mean, even if it's a great conversation that's going on, I mean, there's still the rest of the world, and in particular when it comes to like going to a show or whatever the case is, there's still the rest of the night that you have to enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a certain discipline I think I'm lacking in that regard, but hopefully once we're actually out on the road, supporting this album, that then I'll be put to the test, and see if I could practice a bit of discipline and not get too carried away in conversation. Cause yeah, I definitely, I can go down a rabbit hole on that topic, but yeah, I'm, and even in my past non-musical work experiences, I'm definitely prone to, letting people kind of take advantage of my time in a way. Just because I always want to hear what people have to say, and then they get me going. So, but we'll see how that goes.
So, with that said, with all of that in mind, I mean, what are the current plans to be able to go out and promote this album on a wider scale in the touring setting?
Well, I mean, it's going to happen. It's not exactly happening the way we anticipated. We went through some lineup changes through the album campaign. Leading up to release, we're just now pretty much, we pretty much have a new ensemble solidified. So our plan is, we thought, okay, maybe we could jump on, this tour or that tour, but unfortunately since we took so much time away from playing live to just focus on the album, we're going to basically try to build our live profile up again. So that's going to pretty much mean, some DIY touring, of our own, on our own accord and of our own volition. We'll probably do, week or two stints in, north, south, east, and west. It'll be much more calculated than I'm probably leading you to believe. But there's talks of actually doing a tour next, let's say next spring with Mile Marker Zero. I know that sounds like it's so far away, but with the time left this year, making sure that the band is in tip-top shape, maybe we'll probably do some one-off appearances in our home state here in Connecticut before the year is out. But then we're just gonna try to get around North America as much as we can, and then hopefully make some European festival appearances next year. It feels like we have to climb the mountain, and we're absolutely down to do it. It's just, we just don't want to, go broke in the process, and also consider, we always wanted, the whole point of this band was, is to create a body of work. So that's what we're fundamentally interested in. But, given all of our, financial situations, or lack thereof, we really just have to be careful with how we plan this out. But the bottom line is we want to get out there and, play for the people. It's just a matter of figuring out where and when. So unfortunately, the plans are a bit vague, other than, we will be out there. It's just, people are going to have to just stay in touch or in tune with our, our social media to kind of, see where events start popping up.
And that will make it worth it as well. I mean, when everything does fall in the line, when you get the right lineup, when you get the right possible tour package that goes onto there, when you get the right dates lined up and everything, it's, again, kind of shows like the rest of the band as well. It's just like it's that slow burn process that's going on there. But once everything starts to fall in line and the live shows start to get alive and kicking again, I mean, I just imagine that things will be able to progress that much further. And of course, when you take the financial aspects of it as well, but when you just like focus on the live shows and everything, just being able to constantly build that up and more, I just imagine those live shows are just going to continue to get better and better.
Yeah, and I can tell you, we're in the rehearsal room, now, with 4 out of 5 members of the ensemble. The bass player role is still been a bit of a revolving door, but the rest of us are in there, rehearsing every week, and like we're itching to get out there. It's just finding the right window. And I probably shouldn't bring up finances, but since I did, it really comes down to like we put a lot of money and into our content. So there has to ultimately be a balance between, keeping your content quality, but also being able to afford being on the road for a large, portion of the year, which is ultimately where we want to be. That's why I see 2019 as a big touring year for Head with Wings. So again, I wish it could have happened, this year right after, the album came out. I mean, hell, we didn't even have, a release show. So, I mean, that didn't happen. So yeah, we have a lot to prove in that regard, but I'm confident that we will, because, the 4 of us right now are in the rehearsal room, and we're just enjoying the hell out of it. So I can only imagine once we're there on stage, it should be a pretty joyous experience, because these songs were written for the most part in the live environment. That it was an organic process, and this music needs to be heard live. So that's kind of our next chapter, while getting our cards in order for the next album too.
Yeah, and that's got me so excited too. I mean, it's so hard to predict the way things are going to go down, and the live aspect may not have gone the way that it was originally planned or even wanted to, but I'm glad to see that you were able to find the right group of musicians to be able to help get this music into a live setting, and that's what's going to make the reward feel so much better when everything starts to pay off. You start to get those live shows that are going in there, the future touring that happens in 2019, which I do see that happening, and when I eventually be able to get the opportunity to be able to see you guys live. I mean, with how much I've been hearing the album, I love the album, and like I've said, and with all sincere honesty, one of my favorite albums of 2018. I can't wait to be able to hear these songs in a live setting and see what you guys do in the future, knowing that this consistently slow burn, but constantly getting stronger and stronger from that point, and seeing where you guys go from there on out.
Yeah, it is that, I appreciate you pointing that out. We've always kind of, just like any band, we're not unique in this way, but I can tell you that we are, we're resilient. Like I said before, we have a lot to prove, and like that's what's driving me right now, is that, it's one thing to put out an album, but then you have to show up and deliver and prove that, you're not bullshit. And that's, it's not like we released this album that's just so doctored up, and then we're just this band that, we can't do it. It's just a matter of, now I'm probably beating a dead horse, but I just have a lot to prove in that regard, and I think we have the team to do it now. So that's very exciting. And about it being one of your favorite releases this year, that's amazing and blows my mind, because I know you're just soaking in so much music, a lot more than I probably am. So I really appreciate that it holds up, with I guess some of the best of what's come out this year.
Yeah, and again, I truly mean it too. And I mean, progressive music is always what I go to most. I mean, it's always going to be my favorite style of music, but I love it when a band is able to incorporate their own style into it. And that's what I hear with this band. I mean, you're able to incorporate these different musical influences that are going on there, a story that can be so heartbreaking and uplifting at the same time. I'm, just like knowing how cathartic it must be to be able to put out an album like this. But when you put the whole package together, from the artwork, the lyrics, the production, the songwriting, the musicality that's going into it and everything, sometimes a band just hits you in the right way, and it's something that you constantly want to keep going back to. And yeah, and just like you said, I mean, especially within the last few years, I've been getting so bombarded with interviews and album promos and stuff like that, and so much stuff that I can't even get to be able to promote, and it breaks my heart not being able to promote these albums, be it through my year-end reviews, be it through interviews, or even getting it on my radio show. But I do love those albums, and that's why I'm so thankful I was able to do it with this one, because I didn't want Head with Wings to be another one of those bands that I love, but it's like, but saying it in passing, like, oh, I love it, but I wasn't able to promote it. I'm so glad I was able to do this and be able to show you guys off in this right light, because as much as I love it, I know there's people out there that are going to love it as much as me, if not even more than I do, and I want to be able to show that off for you guys, because I can tell how much time and effort, financial, everything that goes into being in a band, and seeing everything that you guys are going through, even if it's just in the smallest ways. I'm glad that I'm able to help out in some way to get your name known just a little bit more.
Jeez, how could I ever repay you? Thank you for that, honestly. That's huge for us, and like I said, especially even a few months after it came out, it means a lot that you're willing to even have this conversation.
Yeah, and that's why I was so thankful that you reached out to me as well, because even with as many interviews as I do, like I still get that nervousness of not being able to, or reaching out to be able to set up an interview. I mean, sometimes like with PR and stuff like that, like I got really good connections and I'm able to set things up perfectly, but just like still from like doing my very first interview, or just growing up, just in my mental state, I still get so nervous, like reaching out to someone to be able to set something up, and I've wanted to do this for a while. That's why I was so glad that you reached out to me, because I didn't know if I was just going to be too nervous to be able to reach out to you to do it, because I didn't know if I was worthy of your time to be able to promote the band, let alone the other way around.
Oh, come on. No, that's totally worthy, and I mean your list of interviewees is just, it's like never ending and pretty prolific. So you have a good thing going yourself, man.
Well, thank you very much for that. Definitely needed that today, and this great conversation that's going on right now too. I mean, even though there are so many rough patches that can go into being an artist in any form, it's just like there's a lot of struggles that can go along with it. But when you're able to see the fruits of your labor, actually being able to go out there and, getting promotion from great higher ups, seeing the fans talking about it, seeing people very interested about the live show, wondering when you're going to be coming to their town to be able to play live, and the unrealistic ones like the ones from Antarctica that really want you to come out and stuff like that. And, just like seeing this slowly but surely coming around. And I'm so glad to see that with you guys. It's it's a slow process, and I absolutely know about that. I mean, I've been playing music for over 20 years, and I've still yet to release a complete collection with my own playing on there, just due to so many trials and tribulations of being in a band. So, getting this full release out there with everything that went into making this album, I mean, just on that level, it's so great to be able to see that, and then seeing the payoff that people really do enjoy what you're able to do. That's just a great thing to see.
And I guess I'm trying to maintain. It's kind of funny. I'm just an avid fan of music in general and bands that I'm sure a ton of which you listen to, and maybe you've even spoken to some of these artists. But I'm trying to maintain this attitude, and it's kind of tough. It was a Devin Townsend interview that I either read or watched or listened to, where he said that for a good portion of his career, he felt that the world needed his music, or maybe he had convinced himself of that he's not that he was like God's gift to music, but kind of like the world needs what I do to kind of like drive his own self-importance a bit, and then he realized that at one point, no, nobody needs this. Nobody truly is saying like, I'm just using him as an example, like, Devin, the world needs your music. You must continue making it just to satisfy this universal need to consume your art. And then I guess it's a helpful perspective for me to try to maintain too, because making music and making art is largely like a self-important endeavor, and then outwardly we try to, I guess we convince ourselves that there's an audience out there that needs it. But I think Devin Townsend is right in that regard, that that's kind of like a dangerous game to play, and that maybe things do get a bit easier if you're willing to just let that go and just create just for the sake of being a creator,
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with that. And I actually do remember that interview vividly, and I remember other aspects when I've gotten to talk to him personally as well that hinted at stuff like that as well. And it is such an important thing to remember that, even no matter how well perceived your work is, I mean, you want to make sure that you're in it for the right reasons, that you do have that creative mindset going into it, that you still have a want and need to do it, rather than feeling like things are getting rehashed and redundant and you're not even enjoying the music that you're creating anymore, because there's just simply no point in doing that. I mean, I understand it from like the financial aspect, if you're like one of those mega stars that are able to go up and make millions of dollars a year still going on. I mean, no matter what style of music that you're playing, but it's just like when you're at that level where you do have that creative freedom, you can make the albums when you want to make them. You want to make sure that you're doing it for those right reasons, because otherwise the fan base is eventually going to start noticing that, and more importantly, yourself, you're going to realize that you're just making music for the sake of making music, rather than realizing that you have a purpose for making that music.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't miss his point in that regard. I guess on days where it's tough and you're maybe doubting yourself, or if I'm doubting myself, it's easy to convince yourself that if doing it for myself isn't good enough, there's people out there that need this. That's the dangerous attitude, I think. Where, I mean, ultimately, when you have a profile that is that large, there should be people that are out there that are waiting for your work. But yeah, to think that any musician is like God's gift to music is just, I don't want to subscribe to that idea. It's like we all just kind of do. Hopefully, we all carve out our own niche, and for us being labeled as progressive, some people have contested that notion, and I guess I don't blame them. I think what's progressive about us, it has more to do with our ideas and the world building aspect, and maybe less so some of the musical aspects. So maybe I'm just throwing that out there to clear the record, but anyway, I'm prone to tangents. I apologize, but you know, that's just some stuff that's on my mind, or at least talking to you. You know, some things are starting to come to the forefront of my mind in this conversation.
Oh yeah, and you know, I can definitely see that too, where people don't necessarily subscribe. You know, it's just like when they see a label that's out there. Like sometimes it's people automatically want to jump on and see what that's all about, and other people avoid it like the plague if they see something labeled as progressive or metal or rock or whatever the case is. But you know, it's just like, I think it's all about having that open mind, and you know, just using like genres as kind of just like a little template of, or just like an ideal of what it could sound like, because unless it's a carbon copy of a band, every band is able to have their own little spin and nuances into the style of music that they're making, and to me that's what makes the genre terms, you know, it's just like it's very open-ended when it comes to that, because there's so many different styles and ideals that I hear musically going on with Head with Wings. I mean, you could do that base plate of just saying that it's a prog band, but it's so much more than that if you really dig into it.
Yeah, there's just you know, it's a fusion kind of thing, you know, where we just you know, we just have all of these different you know, types of music in our DNA, and artists that we have, you know, an affinity for, and yeah, those elements you know, come out, and hopefully in a way that is unique to us, which, you know, allowed us to kind of cultivate a sound. So that is something that we're proud of. You know, even if people don't see us as progressive, I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's just a label, but you know, we are proud that we do have our own kind of stamp on rock music, I think. And I always kind of just wanted to be in a hard rock band. I think that's kind of, maybe it was just kind of growing up in the, you know, in the 90s. You know, I was like, oh, I'm not quite grunge, you know, that doesn't really work for me. I'm definitely not punk, you know, a bit emo. So, you know, there's a bit of that. I did have, you're familiar with the band KDOT?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Toby Driver said, I reached out to him about, you know, an upcoming KDOT tour that I guess they're still figuring out for their, you know, their next album cycle. And he said, he was like, yeah, you guys are emo in the best way. And he was like, but you're definitely not prog, but you're emo. And he was like, I think that could work for us. You know, I'll, you know, get back to me around Halloween or something, I think he said. But it's interesting when you start to get, you know, these different takes on it, and especially from someone who's in, you know, a heralded progressive act, to then say, yeah, Head with Wings is emo. And then, I mean, hey, we've gotten, like, you know, Jimmy Eat World comparisons. I mean, they're emo, right? I mean, I don't, I guess, do you even know that band?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's
Okay.
just like, I guess I could see that emo comparison. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who think that just because the vocals are a little bit higher or something like that, they automatically assume that it's emo. I mean, without even listening to the lyrics. So you know, it's a little, it's a wavering line. I think it kind of goes into there. I mean, there's a lot of emotion going back into Head with Wings. There's a lot of emotion that goes into the band. I guess I wouldn't necessarily label it as emo, but I can definitely see how someone would perceive it like that. I just find it kind of funny that Toby labeled it that way, because you know, it's like I can see it from that side too.
Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't fishing for, you know, hey, what's your take on my band? It was more like, you know, hey, you know, can we tour with you kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And then that's kind of how that came about. But yeah, that kind of just stuck with me, you know, for one reason or another. But I'm a huge Toby Driver fan, so that, you know, that's always going to kind of stick in some regard.
Oh yeah, and I very much am as well. I mean, I discovered Modeling on the Well first, and I discovered KDOT, and then seeing of his other work with like Vara and stuff like that. I mean, it's just like I really appreciate someone like him who's willing to do so many different kind of abstract things, but they're always so cohesive when you do listen to it. And you know, it's just, I really admire someone who's able to do something like that.
Yeah, and no, absolutely. And the fact that he's puts out one or two records a year, whether or not it's a solo release or a KDOT album, or, you know, he's just quite the prolific guy. He's also from the town that I currently reside in. So interestingly enough, from Meriden, Connecticut.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, whether that does come to fruition or not, it's just I got it stuck in my head now seeing KDOT Head with Wings tour. I mean, for someone of my musical taste, I mean that just sounds like an absolutely perfect night to me.
Yeah, I think it would. I think it would be a night where you're really, and let alone any of the other bands on that tour or the bill. Yeah, it would be quite the colorful night. You know, it would, that kind of a package. I mean, that's the kind of package that we'd be gunning for. You know, the likelihood is that we're going to have to build. We're going to build our own tours for a while. You know, try to raise our live profile a bit. You know, prove that that you should. I mean, if you listen to the album, hopefully that's proof enough that you'd want to come out and see us. But there's a little bit of a primal element to the live set that I think needs to be experienced in person. Just like a band like KDOT. I mean, have you seen them live?
Unfortunately, not yet, but I really, really want to.
Yeah, it's incredible. I saw them on the Coyote tour at a venue in Connecticut, in Milford, Connecticut, Daniel Street, that closed down shortly after that. But that was that was one of those game-changing nights for me. You know, you get a few of those every now and again where you're moved to the point of wanting to maybe be so foolish to want to make a career out of music, and that's like one of those nights that I could point to. That and just like our new guitar player in the band, Mike, he pointed to a Porcupine Tree show in Hartford, Connecticut in 2007 on the Fear of a Blank Planet tour. Like that was another night where that was just totally changed my life in terms of wanting to be more involved in live music and making albums and stuff like that. So we do have that. The two of us, he's a new member in our band, but the two of us have that common ground where like we were high school kids that were listening to Tool, and then once we saw Porcupine Tree live, it kind of just like blew the roof right off.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. It's just like I know Tool, especially in high school. I mean, I was the same way too. I discovered Tool in high school, and that was a gateway of what was possible. I mean, it was great to see at the time a very a modern version of like King Crimson, being able to experiment that much and being able to hear those heavy things, and then being able to discover Porcupine Tree later. And you just look back in hindsight, it's like, wow, if Tool's not depressing enough, I just discovered the king of depressing music, Steven Wilson.
Right. Yeah. Tool was kind of like a gateway drug in a way. It ended up kind of causing me to go a little bit forwards and then way backwards, and then forward again to kind of get that, what the retrospective on progressive music. I mean, on top of all that, I worked at an FYE for like 5 years, so like right in the midst of my most impressionable phase. That stretch of time of catching these bands coming through on tour and just working at the CD shop and constantly being inundated with new music and entertainment. It was just like a very not my favorite work experience per se, but in terms of life experiences, that was a great time for sure.
Yeah, and what a great way to be able to discover music like that. I mean, some people do it just clearly through the internet. Sometimes people do it based on recommendations. Some people had that great opportunity to be able to work in a place that did have albums for sale and being able to experience that. I mean, no matter how you discover music, I mean, when you do have that passion for music and you're able to discover all these bands that you wouldn't necessarily hear like on Top 40 radio or from local friends or whatever the case is, it's just like when you're able to discover those bands for yourself and you're really able to sit down and just dig into the tracks, dig into the artwork, everything that goes into it. I mean, it's such a great feeling, and that's what I'm so great again, just to bring things back around with Head with Wings. I mean, I love the presentation of everything that's going into the band, both musically, through the artwork, the lyrics, everything that's going in there, because there is so much to catch onto and really invest yourself into what's going on with the band.
Yeah, and that's we're just kind of a product of what we love, all these bands that have kind of found their way into our conversation, are all just perfect examples of providing depth in their work, in the presentation, in every regard. I'd like to go one step further. As I mentioned, Head with Wings becoming like a media amalgamation where we have music videos that are interconnected, that are adaptations of lyrics from our album, but they might be totally different stories that are isolated just in that filmic form. And in the past we've tried to do a comic book, but then we realized, holy crap, do you know how much money it is to pay an illustrator to actually do a fully fledged graphic novel or comic book, let alone a series. So that's when I realized, well, I guess we're not quite there yet. It's just we want to do so much, but as we were touching on earlier in the conversation, you kind of have to pick your battles in the present, and we're kind of at that fork in the road where it's like, we could just keep making great video content, but we really need to to pool our resources to get on the road, get over to Europe, maybe even Australia, all these places where our music is being listened to and embraced, but yet we're just trying to mobilize here. And then you start to try to convince yourself, oh, maybe I should relocate. Maybe this isn't the best area to get off the ground. But I don't know what you make of that. I'm fairly certain that like we could get off the ground in Connecticut, and it wouldn't matter so much if we're not starting out of California, let's say. I'd love if we can relocate to London, but that would just be such a monumental move right now, with given where everyone stands in their personal lives, even.
Oh yeah, and being originally from a very small town in Wisconsin, and now living in Minnesota, where there is a more thriving music scene. I mean, I feel like you can pretty much as long as you have like a connection to the internet or anything, you are able to find a way to be able to promote yourself and get yourself off the ground from wherever you are. I mean, as long as you got those connections, you're able to promote yourself. I mean, as long as you can feasibly go to different places and be able to play shows when the time comes and everything. I mean, you can be from anywhere and be able to pull yourself off. I mean, of course, there are those connections. I mean, like if you were ever to relocate to London and just get those London aspects of everything that's going on, that could help so much. But there's nothing saying you can't do that from Connecticut, where you are right now.
Yeah, and we will get off the ground here, but it's interesting when you start to see where interest is popping up, and where most of where your network lies. It's easy to kind of contaminate your mindset, I guess, a little bit. But the healthy way to look at it is just that that we're going to work towards getting our band to a position where it truly doesn't matter where we're operating out of. It's just all good,
Oh yeah, and I've noticed that so much. I mean, through the last 7 years of what I'm doing. I mean, there's some bands that are from established places like New York City or Chicago or London or LA, and then there's other ones that are just like one-man projects that work out of their bedroom, and then we're able to get a full-fledged band out of that from very small areas. So it's just like everyone has their own story and their own path to forge, and it's just I do see that happening here with Head with Wings. It's just all these ambitions that are going on with a band that can be fully realized in time, but just making sure that you stick to your guns with what you want to accomplish musically, and then being able to branch off into these other aspects like you were talking about, the live show, music videos, being able to go off into these other musical media outlets, and being able to just build up the band and separate yourself from other bands that are out there, just forging your own name out there. And I definitely think that you guys got the right mindset going into it. It's just it'll take some time. It'll take the financial aspects, of course, and just the right people checking you out at the right time. But it's gonna happen. I can sense it.
Yeah, thank you for the the words of encouragement there. I appreciate that, because it's very easy to when you look at a band like us that can branch into these down these other avenues. For example, 9-track album. Each song is was written to kind of be a chapter. Like a 9-chapter story arc, right? Mm-hmm. And it kind of loosely follows like a classical Hollywood formula in a way. beginning, middle, end. You have your climax to your conclusion, and you have your exposition there in the beginning. I mean, it's pretty much like that. But I've been, toying with the idea of wanting to just finally, like, a lot of it is like in my head, there's basically like a screenplay or a script, what have you, in my head. And now it's just a matter of, did I want to dedicate the time to kind of getting it on paper? And if I did, what does that mean? Now am I trying to be a filmmaker now? And unfortunately, even in music, like, my own production endeavors are more of just like a means to an end. I like working with a team. I love collaborating. I'm not the most tech savvy individual. I'm highly conceptual and idea based. I'm like the idea guy in the band. What if this? What if that? We should try this. What if that? And there's like 70% shit ideas, and then 30% good/great ideas. But I think actually Brandon, our guitar player, talked me out of digging into that more recently, because I was getting, we're working on new music, but on one hand, I was like, maybe I should just buckle down and just write the damn thing and get it out of my head, because all that's really on paper, for the, I was like, how do you even pitch a TV show? It could be, for the story of From Worry to Shame could be a feature film. It could be an episodic TV series. I mean, it's, the roots are there. So I think what's going to happen is, we'll stick to just focusing on the musical side of things. And, hopefully as time goes on, I'll just write it. I'll write the thing over time. And then maybe there will come a point where, someone would want to take that project on, and we wouldn't have to now be figuring out how to fund a film, which would just be completely absurd and would totally knock us off our path, I think. I mean, look at someone like Steven Wilson. Like, you think he would have been involved in multiple films by now, but yet it hasn't happened. Feature films, he has plenty of live concert films, but, like, if someone like him hasn't been able to pull it off yet, how the hell are we going to pull that off?
He did get one thing close, even though it was more indie. Last year, video game came out called Last Day of June, which was inspired by Steven Wilson's music, and it's a very short game, but it's like a very emotionally impacted game, and I can see how if someone's not a Steven Wilson fan, they might not be as invested, but if you're familiar with Steven Wilson, it's like one of the most heart-wrenching games that you can play.
You know what? And that was on my list of games to buy on Steam, and I haven't picked it up yet. So thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, absolutely. Go pick it up. I mean, it's very short. I think it's about like anywhere from like 2 to 4 hours, depending on how much you want to invest into it. But yeah, it's just one of those games, and then you just like hear these little snippets and constantly repeating of certain motifs from Steven Wilson's work, and it just hits you in all the right levels and everything. It's not the most mechanically sound game, but it's a very impactful one.
Yeah, I heard great things about it, and yeah, it's good that you brought that up, because I mean that's a worthy example of getting, that's close enough to film. I mean, not quite. I mean, I think video games are probably like the finest art form, to be honest. Because it's taking the best of every, taking the best of, a musical aspect, a filmmaking aspect, a game design and development aspect, and you're fusing all of it together. How could that not be a piece of high art? So yeah, that's definitely a worthy achievement for him. But all that aside, it would be a major undertaking to truly devise, a proper screenplay for, a series or a film based off of From Worry to Shame. The content is ripe for it. It's just a matter of, what are our priorities right now? And as we've talked about earlier, the priority right now is getting road ready and getting out there and just proving that this band should be heard, live. But again, I digress. That's all. It just all ties back to my long-winded way of saying that, there's a lot that we could do. It's just a matter of focusing on, I think the true battle is just staying focused on what you should be focusing on in the present.
Oh, very much so. And yeah, I mean, it does come down, it's just like the metaphor of like building a house. I mean, making sure that you have like the proper foundation and then the right load-bearing stuff that goes into it, using the right things to be able to create the structure that's going on there, and then you're able to build and progress more onto that. I mean, even if you got like a full-fledged house that you're happy with and you got the land for it, you're able to expand more onto that house if you want to. And I think that'd be a great way to look at it. It's just like a building that live set, building the music, building up the set list, any projection work that might go into the sets, or whatever would be going on with that. Just like making sure that all of that's going up on the right level. And that way, when people get that live experience of seeing what the band is all capable of, you're able to expand into those other media outlets, and you're that much stronger and have that much stronger of a cause to be able to pull that off.
Right. And I don't quite know just yet if we're going to have the visuals right away. I know that we, if you're familiar with the Summer Something Gives animated video.
Oh, yes.
The director and production team behind that, the Black Soil in Ukraine, Igor, the director of that, he's been super hands-on in pretty much getting us situated with having live visuals, which would largely be pulled from, all of those track stream videos that we have on YouTube. We did like a video for every song, but a lot of those videos were kind of like reinterpretations of scenes from the Summer Something Gives video. So we have all of these, different tones that we could play with. And so that's all to say, there will ultimately be a visual aspect to our performance, but right now, at least for the first maybe run of shows, we might not have that, but it'll certainly get built into the canon over time, because we're already developing that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to hear that too. And I think that's a very strong way to be able to do that too. I mean, making sure that the music and the band is going to be as tight as you can possibly get, and just making sure that everything's going to go the way that you want it to in the live set. And then when you get to that point, to be able to add the visuals and the projections and everything else that goes into it, it's just going to heighten the show.
Right. And we're not actually, as of now, a band that's playing live to a click. We're free, and there's just something about this band that just works in that manner. That's not, we did, the album was recorded to a click, but those clicks were set specifically to the live feel and vibe of the music. So that, that took, that was its own undertaking, just to make sure that we weren't taking a great sounding live band, that had a great vibe and mood, and then completely, losing that on record. So thankfully that was, in large part because of Frank. He was able to maintain that. So, never say never, but, when you see Head with Wings, it'll likely be just kind of like more of a free experience and less rigid, which we kind of like for this kind of music.
Yeah, and I think they can only benefit from it. I mean, there are some bands that are out there that couldn't sound possibly better when they play to a click track, and it's just like they can sound as mechanical and proficient as possible. But there's other bands that are out there that can benefit so much from just being free, making sure that the music goes the way that they want it to. If things speed up or slow down a little bit in the live setting, that is just fine. And that's exactly what I imagined with Head with Wings. I want it to be that kind of emotional experience that doesn't feel like it needs to fit into a particular structure, but just way more free.
Yeah, I'm glad you see it that way, because that is how we see it in the band. And I know it's become my buzzword, but primal is, I keep going back to that, but that's kind of what comes out in the live environment. But hey, at this point, I've probably gone on about it so much that people are going to be like, well, then get the hell out there, guy. And believe me, we're getting close.
Yeah, and again, that's just got me so excited. With all the possible opportunities that are going to be coming up in the future, and just more and more people getting to check you guys out from any aspects. Be it this interview, be it any review that they see online, be it friends' recommendations, whatever the case is, just constantly being able to build what Head with Wings can possibly be in the future. And I know things are going to be going the way that they should be going, and I'm very excited to see what's going to be happening with all of that, because if this is what you're capable of in the full release concept with what's going on with this album and everything that you got planned, and making sure that everything's going to be as tight as it can possibly be, just hopefully, barring any financial situations or anything like that, you're just going to continue to rise and rise, and I can't wait to see that happen.
Thanks. I'm glad you're in our corner, and I have a feeling you'll be there, right there along with us, in the years to come, and I feel good about that. I'm glad that, we we were able to kind of, befriend each other and hit it off in that way.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it goes without saying. I mean, like, anytime that you got something to promote, like any upcoming touring that does eventually happen, the next album, I mean, whatever happens, I mean, I want to be there to be able to try to promote it as much as I possibly can. I mean, being able to get this insight for talking this long, being able to get into everything of what Head with Wings is and what can be in the future, I mean, that's just got me so excited, and I want to be able to help promote that as much as I possibly can.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, as far as the next album is concerned, I put up a post on social media, like last week or the week before, that was basically asking, hey, out of these producers, who do you think would be, the best fit for the next album? And of course, Steven Wilson comes up, and that who knows in what world that would ever be plausible, because, he's just nonstop, working on his own stuff. But then, Bruce Sword, Forrester Savell, John Mitchell, I just have a feeling that we're going to be a little bit stubborn, because, working with people on that level does not come cheap, especially without, any help from, a record label, let's say. So that might take some time if we didn't end up self-producing it. And, the Earthside guys are fully immersed in their next album. And again, we did just put this out, so it's like, here we are 3 months removed from releasing the first one, and I'm already like, all right, the next one and the producer, and it's going to cost this much, and it's just, yeah, again, that'll all come in time. But I do think that, we're not going to settle for anything less than, the best decision that we can make at the time, and what's feasible, and within reason. But man, would it just be awesome to have one of those legends, get their hands on it. Like if Earthside could do this with us, just imagine, what could be next,
Oh, very much so. I mean, that was how I first heard of Head with Wings, was hearing the attachment from Earthside. So, just like, I mean, that's what it can all come down to. I mean, the fact that Toby Driver has interest in what's going on with Head with Wings, I mean, that could lead to something. There could be another attachment from Earthside where a higher up from them is like interested in what you guys are capable of and might want to do something down the road. I mean, there's so many connections that can happen, and that's such a great thing about the internet and social media and all these different things that are out there. I mean, there's obviously negative sides that go on to there, but there's so many positives that can come from it as well. And just like definitely, at least from my personal aspect, I mean, being able to discover a band like this, I mean, it's one of the reasons I love doing what I do, being able to help promote these bands and show off the music that I truly care about. And that's what's got me so excited about what does happen for you guys in the future. I mean, and it makes me so happy to hear that you're already thinking about the next album, even though this just came out a few months ago. It's just like, it's great to see that, that drive and that passion for the band is there, and you just want it to constantly, consistently grow.
Yeah, it's a day-to-day thing. I'm here living it every day. It's the moment I wake up. Well, usually it's coffee and then Head with Wings. sometimes it's like I wake up and I'm just like, oh, look, I got to do this, or I got to do that, or there's this didn't happen, or that didn't happen, or I got to talk to so and so, and blah blah blah. But yeah, it all comes from a place of just wanting to keep creating. And I always said to myself when I finished my run at university here in Connecticut back in 2011, I knew once I got out of school, like this is what I was going to focus on, for better or worse. And thankfully it's been getting better. So I'm just going to keep doing what I do, And
I think with those words, I think that's an amazing way to be able to end this conversation. I love hearing that passion that's going into what you're doing. I mean, you're obviously doing this for the right reasons, and you want to be able to build it up, get that fan base going, but making sure that you're going to be happy with what you're producing as far as content. And with all of that said, thank you for spending this much time being able to talk to me about everything that's going on in your world right now. And of course, talking about Head with Wings, I mean, the brand new album, possible upcoming touring that's going to be happening in the future, just the mindset of what could happen with Head with Wings. It was amazing to be able to get your insight into everything that's going on in your world right now.
It's a total pleasure, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, likewise as well. I mean, when I'm able to have these great conversations like this, where I only got like 25 minutes to be able to get a conversation, so I can only ask a few questions that I want to ask to. But it was great. I mean, I'm looking at this now. It's almost been an hour and 20 minutes that we've been able to discuss everything that's going on in your world right now, and just like getting even more emotionally invested in what this band is about. And again, I thank you so much for taking this time.
No, thank you for your time. It's been a joy, and definitely, like I said the other day, you're definitely a kindred spirit, and I sense that when I'm talking with you, and this is the first time we got to talk at length and on the phone. So again, I know you have a really busy schedule, but maybe at some point we'll be able to have a call again. And on this note, I guess it's time to get some more coffee.